I have some good news and some bad news about Le Mans Ultimate. The good news is that update 1.3 and the latest ELMS DLC, which are arriving tomorrow, are pretty good and bring a number of improvements. I've already had the chance to test the new content all weekend. To my surprise, we're also getting what's probably the biggest force feedback change since LMU launched, and I think a lot of you will like it. The bad news is that the career mode is still a work in progress and will probably arrive much later in 2026. At least we've gotten a few new teasers and screenshots that show that this will have significantly more depth than expected. But for single-player fans, this is likely still a letdown. Personally, a simple championship mode would have been enough for me at first, but Studio 397 seems to be cooking up something bigger here. In this video, I'll tell you why version 1.3 still offers one of the best single-player sim racing experiences out there. Let's go. Welcome back to Overtake. I'm Michel and we're heading straight to Barcelona. The Circuit de Barcelona-Catalunya, along with the latest LMP3 car, the Duqueine D09, is included in the ELMS Pack 3 DLC and costs £8.99, €9.99 or $11.99 when purchased separately. The first two packs featured the first two ELMS LMP3 cars, Silverstone and Paul Ricard. A Season Pass for all three DLC packs is also available. You save a little bit there, and especially if you play LMU a lot online or just want the full ELMS experience, I think it's definitely worth it. Of the three tracks, Barcelona is definitely my personal favorite. I was most familiar with it from F1 games before, and my goodness, the track has such a great flow even in GT3 cars and also prototypes. The fact that it also works brilliantly in multi-class traffic and offers plenty of overtaking opportunities is just a cherry on top. I highly recommend a 30-minute ELMS race in the Hypercar LMP2, because after about 10 minutes you'll encounter the GT3 cars for the first time, and another 10 minutes later you'll face a mixed traffic, both GT3 and LMP3 cars. Since the Le Mans Ultimate Racing AI usually handles this wonderfully, it's extremely exciting and entertaining, and there was not a single frustrating moment with traffic, as many corners, both on entry and exit, make it easy to pass slower cars. I found turn 5, the Seat corner, this slow downhill left-hander, pretty tricky, even though the high curb on the inside is a classic don't cut and basically tells you where to drive and where not to. Still tricky though. I found the track limits to be pretty fair, especially in the final turn 13, New Holland. I tended to be a bit too optimistic in order to carry as much speed as possible onto the start-finish straight. You shouldn't cross that marked line that I show you here to avoid the warnings. As the battle for the podium reached its climax in LMP2, we ended up catching up with the GT3 field again just before the 30-minute mark, so there are constant opportunities to close gaps and everything is incredibly dynamic. I'll be completely honest, I've probably never had this much fun in an AI race before, and that's why today's video is titled Peak Le Mans Ultimate. And all of you watching, you are peak viewers, and we're about to hit 180,000 subs. However, about 70% of you aren't subscribers yet. So if you enjoy our content, we'd really appreciate if you do so. It's free after all. Thanks so much. One more tip for the Barcelona race. I had the AI level set to 95 and aggression set to high. So if you want the pace to be a bit faster, there's still room to go. By the way, I'd say the unrestricted Hypercar 07 LMP2 is faster than a Hypercar at Barcelona. Feel free to give it a try tomorrow and let me know if you had the same experience. The new Duqueine, I hope I pronounced it correctly, D09 now completes the LMP3 field for the 2025 European Le Mans Series. Like the Ligier and Ginetta, it's based on the Gen 3 regulations for LMP3, so it features the same 470 horsepower 3.5-liter V6 twin-turbo engine from Toyota and the same gearbox. Its characteristics are therefore very similar to the other two, but there are a few setup differences, especially between the three cars, particularly in terms of anti-roll bars, aero, spring setup, With standard setups, the Ligier is a bit more on the edge, while the Ginetta and Duqueine are a bit more planted. Unfortunately, the new Duqueine D09 is also right-hand drive, so my preferred choice in the class remains the Ginetta. Similar to most of the other prototypes in LMU, the standard setup has the brake force at 80%, which provides a decent safety margin to make it more beginner-friendly. The LMP3s have TC, but no ABS. This makes it the perfect entry point to prepare for LMP2 and Hypercars. I would recommend it to anyone looking to get started with Le Mans Ultimate, but even with 80% brake force, I was still able to trigger lockups and lose the rear, so be careful. Mastering the brake, being smooth and trail braking are still the core elements for a good lap in LMU. Before we get to the FFB improvements, let's briefly return to the tracks. There are new variants available for all owners of the previous ELMS packs, specifically for Silverstone and Paul Ricard. For one thing, the WEC now features the authentic Silverstone pit lane. In the ELMS, you use the pit lane with the exit before maggots, while in the WEC, we're now in the main pit lane next to Hamilton Straight, which is also used in F1. On top of that, there are the national and international variants of Silverstone to mix things up. Paul Ricard is a creative masterpiece anyway, and the variants also have very catchy names. 1A, 1A V2, 1A V2 Short, and 3A. But joking aside, they're definitely not a bad choice for some variety, and shorter sprint races, especially on the 3A variant. 3A actually works pretty well, for example, for an LMP3 only race. The T1 shortcuts in particular can make for some exciting action. The Imola, Portimao and Spa ELMS layouts are now available as well, all with 44 grid slots. If I've counted correctly, Le Mans Ultimate has now 14 locations, 7 from the base game and 7 added via DLC. Now on the topic of force feedback, haptic feedback and true force support. I almost feel like Studio 397 has been selling this short so far, because to me, something fundamental is happening here. Up until now, my biggest criticism of LMU was that while you generally get a good feel for the track, meaning the surface communicated well, the tires did not so much. So a fast pace always relied heavily on learned reflexes and lots of practice, not on actually feeling and working with the tires. The new additional force feedback effects, which are accessible via the new slider in the control options and explicitly do not require a Logitech steering wheel with true force, actually add a whole new level of effects. Specifically, a certain frequency now directly indicates tire contact, both during lateral acceleration and when braking if the tires lock up. While this feature was previously available via haptic or active pedals from some manufacturers or through SimHub, this sensor is now being made accessible to everyone without the need for any additional devices or software. Especially with hypercars, you still have very little time to react to locking up or losing traction, but particularly in the LMP2, I think the new effect, which tells me right away when the tire is at the limit of the grip, has saved my butt 1-2 times now. On the SimoCube 3 Pro, the effect caused a bit too much noise for me at 100%. At 80%, I find it just right. At the very bottom of the sound menu, you can now control haptic devices directly through LMU if they're available as audio devices in Windows, such as bass shakers, butt kickers, or, for example, Sensit haptics. Feel free to let us know if the effects come across well for you, or if you notice any difference at all compared to the SimHub integrations. Either way, I think that the additional force feedback effects in particular significantly improve the drivability of the Le Mans Ultimate and should make it easier for many people to give even the difficult hypercars another try, because you simply understand the limits of the tires better. So a big thumbs up from me here. To wrap things up, let's take a look at a few highlights from the other updates category. LMU has received an update for the system, the middleware behind the UI. The most noticeable effect is improved loading times. Studio 397 reports an improvement of about 20%. I've tested this using Spa and Le Mans as examples. On the Ardennes roller coaster circuit with a full grid, it now takes 40 seconds for the Start Driving button to become available, down from 53 seconds previously. That's about 24.5% faster. At Le Mans, the change is even more noticeable. We've gone from 88 seconds down to 64, which is 37.5% faster. So the loading times are still relatively long, but it's nice to see continued optimization in these areas as well. I think the menus are generally a bit more responsive now than before, especially when switching quickly between tabs. Further tweaks have also been made to the balance of performance BOP. You can read about detailed changes in our article on overtake.gg. The system behind it now apparently allows for easier and more flexible updates, they state. So if action needs to be taken before a special event, Studio 397 should now be able to respond more effectively. I'm hoping for a slightly less dominant meta or fewer individual dominant cars. The number of Cadillacs at the 12 Hours of Le Mans was already a bit absurd, just to make one example. Then the LMU engine now also supports occlusion culling. This is a rendering technique that doesn't process hidden objects and their geometry, thereby reducing the load on system resources. In particular, driving past the pit lane, especially when it's busy, should have less of an impact on FPS because the cars will just not be rendered or the geometry will not be rendered. Overall, a very good update, and Stephen Hood has announced some Easter eggs in the developer blog. Let's see if a surprise awaits us tomorrow. Thank you for sticking with me until the end. Another racing sim recently received a new update. You can find my thoughts on Project Motor Racing 2.0 linked here, also a recommended watch. Have a great week everyone, enjoy racing.